And welcome back to the show. This week we have a special guest, Mr. Richard Midson. He is a broadcaster, podcaster, and techie by trade. And he's going to explain a little bit to us on how he got into the industry with no formal qualifications. So welcome, Richard.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, this is really exciting to do this because it's not often you get to kind of talk to people that want to know the reality of how to do it and how to take advantage of broadcasting. There's a lot of sort of claims out there, but it's nice to talk about the reality. I think it's really good what you're doing. I like it.
Yeah, so I'm appealing to not only upcoming graduates, but to new entrants in general. So why don't we start with, where did you start off and what was your route in sort of thing?
My route into journalism I was told to get a normal office job. That's what I always believed I had to do. So I applied for a job at a brick sales firm. You see where this is leading into journalism, right?
Yeah.
No. 2 weeks later, they hated me. I hated them. And I realized that perhaps an office job wasn't quite right for me. And I had been helping out at a local radio station. I'd done a little bit of hospital radio, just dabbling around. I'd never seriously thought that I could ever get a job in this. And a friend of mine was working as an editor at a local newspaper. And I said, can I come and sit in your office and apply for jobs? At least it'll be warm while I'm in there. So I went into the office, and of course I didn't apply for jobs. I started helping out in the paper. And the second week I was there, I had the front page exclusive that I'd found out by talking to a university about a problem that they had going on. But I knew that I wasn't a writer. I mean, I cannot string a sentence together. I'm terrible. The editors would just laugh at everything I put in front of them.
Yeah.
So I also knew someone that was doing a little bit of sport at a local radio station. So I went in there, started going in there more, got to know the people, got to know the brand new editor who turned up, and just started doing more and more and helping out. And then when I did this 2-week job, which how should we say, we parted ways. I think they would say I got fired very quickly. I was out in my, I was out in my tour, and I thought, well, why don't I apply for a journalism course? I did. I applied to London College of Print and Technology, which at the time was, I'm not so sure how it is now, but it was one of the courses that you tried to get onto, and I got offered a place.
Yeah.
But then the next day, the owner of the radio station I was going into said to me, look, if you drop the course, we'll train you on the job.
Perfect.
So I rang up the course and I said, look, I know you've offered me a place on one of the top courses in the country. What do I do? And the secretary of the course said, take the job. Because at the end of the day, the reason for doing the course is to get the job. Now, I do have some slight regrets for not doing it. But a couple of weeks later, I was sitting there in a news studio, broadcasting across Southwest London and North Surrey, reaching thousands of people. And I was sitting down there with no training, no skills. I had no idea how to write a news story. And how they started off was they just said, you get in there and read the news, we'll write it, and you'll learn on the job. So there I was about to present a 20-minute news program. And I still remember we know in broadcasting when you hear the jingle and you kind of hear that beat in the jingle where you're going to start talking.
Yeah.
And the jingle started and I just started laughing because I simply could not believe someone was giving me money to talk and do something that was fun. To me, the only job you ever did was sat in an office and got bored and pushed paper. And here I was in a job where they paid me to be creative and expressive and have a great time with amazing creative people.
Wow.
And it kind of went on from there. And I just kind of got carried away with that. And I started doing more and more and more. And it eventually led me, I think it was 3 years later, I went from that local radio station to being one of the duty editors at RN, which is was ITN's main news service that used to distribute to 300 independent stations around the country.
Wow.
With no training. So It was quite a journey.
Yeah. And it's amazing how sort of situations present themselves. And I guess, like, was there when did you know that the broadcast industry was your place to go? Was there any flags, or was there any sort of gut feelings that this is me, this is what I want to do? Is there anything that looking back you're like, that was a subtle hint that this is the place for me?
To me, it was always a game. So in a way, even throughout my entire time as a journalist, and I was an editor at different places. I also there was a radio station called, well, if you live in London, you know of LBC. And LBC had a news service, a rolling news service, which was kind of like Sky TV, but on the radio. And I was the drive time presenter of that for a couple of years as well. And even through the whole of that, it never felt like I'd ever actually got a job. It was just this kind of creative explosion that I was always going through. I enjoyed it so much. I mean, obviously there are ups and downs. You have bad days, but it just never, ever felt like a job.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have said there was a moment where I went, you know what, this is my calling. I just fell into it. I took every opportunity because I just wanted to, because it felt like fun. And I just carried on having fun. So all the documentaries I made, all the different things I did were just, I was just pulled that way. I just let myself go for every opportunity there was that was exciting to me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And what about the journey sort of through the industry? You got that break where you didn't have to go on the course, and you sort of almost got a shortcut into that particular job role. But then what you've done in the years after that, you've sort of moved around and had different roles.
Yeah, very much so. So initially what I did was I spent a couple of years there. And I think one of the things, local radio is a great place to practice.
Yeah.
And the reason why I think it is, and this is for TV as well, is local radio is a great place because the budgets are so small that if you're prepared to stick your neck out and do something for free, you'll almost certainly be allowed to do it. And that allowed me to do things. So the main thing I did that changed everything for me was I got in contact with some environmentalists who I think probably sent a press release. And I made contact with them, and they were going to the European Parliament to try and change this law or get, I'm trying to remember the detail of it now. I'm trying to get something overturned. And I said, look, can I come with you? And they, first of all, what's, yeah. And I said, well, I just genuinely want to report on what you do. I don't want to say whether you're good or bad. I just want to simply report on what you're doing and how you go about it.
Yeah.
And I went with them at my own expense, in my own time. I took holiday to do it. And I got to know them really well. So when the other journalists were outside the European Parliament, I was inside with them. So then I rang up IRN thinking, well, this is a great opportunity here. And I said, look, I'm with these people. Would you like a voicer? So in other words, a short piece of audio from a journalist on the scene. And they were like, well, yeah, of course, you're in with them.
Yeah.
So I did this again. I didn't ask for any money. There wouldn't have been any money. But it meant that then when I eventually applied for IRN, I said, well, I've already done some stuff for you.
Ah, yes.
So, of course, that immediately was like, well, hang on, we've already put this guy out on our national network. He can't be that bad.
Yeah. So
the door then opened up.
Yeah.
So I spent 2 years at this original radio station. Then it was probably, if I'm honest, it was probably overpay that I finally thought, I've had enough of this. I can't afford to live on this. So I went freelancing. And then I freelanced, and then I applied to IRN and did that. And I got into IRN, and I think I'd been there 3 months at IRN. And then one day, it was a Sunday, and I turned up, and the editor was off sick. And I'm still convinced it was because I was the oldest person in the room at the time. They said, you're in the editor's chair today. Yeah. And I don't think they honestly knew I had no journalism training at all. They obviously thought I was okay for the 3 months I'd done. So I sat down, and I had these journalists working for me that day who'd got years of experience and training.
Yeah.
And it was a baptism of fire, absolute fire. But by the end of the week, the editor hadn't come back to work yet, and I was still in that seat. And I think it was a couple of weeks after that, they offered me a full-time job as an editor.
Yeah. Amazing.
So to me, it really is about just going for it. And and forget whether you're being paid or not. Journalism, this is not a 9-to-5 job where you go there, get paid well, and get adored. It's all down to you. It's 100% down to you. If you're not passionate about it and want to do it for no money, you're probably not going to get there. You've got to love this job. And it's only then that the rewards, the opportunities, the amazing people you get to meet, the amazing connections you get to make, then fall into place.
Yeah. And I guess those sort of early days for everybody, I'm trying to think, is it down to luck? Is it about connections? Is it about perseverance? Is it about throwing yourself in at the deep end? Is it about all that stuff, basically?
I'd say the whole lot.
Yeah.
One other thing is that in my entire career as a journalist, I think I had one interview.
Yeah.
Because when you're on the radio and also on TV, your CV is what's going out. So I'd been at that radio station I started at, and I'd only been there 2 weeks. And the head of programming at Capital Radio London, which obviously used to be huge, used to be the independent, one of the first independent stations, lives in my area where I was broadcasting, and heard me on there and told the program controller at another station on the South Coast to give me a call. Now, I didn't tell them I had no training again. So I went down for an interview, and obviously had to tell the guy that, I'd been doing it for 2 weeks and hadn't got a clue how to write a script. So I didn't get a job, but that's the kind of thing that happens. So you've got to get on air. As I say, if no one's paying you, get on air anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do something different as well. It's, like, go with the environmentalists, whatever you're passionate about. When I started, there wasn't the internet. Well, I couldn't have done the podcast. I couldn't have done a YouTube channel. But now there is no reason not to start being a journalist or a broadcaster before you become a journalist or a broadcaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's going to get you in the door.
Yeah. And just thinking about that no formal training, do you have to compensate differently somehow? Maybe you have to be a little bit braver, perhaps?
I think this actually isn't a very helpful answer, but I think it's the truth, which is I never really realized how close I got to the edge until after I wasn't doing full-time broadcasting.
Yeah.
There was a case when I was at IRN, and the editor who was on before me in the morning almost brought down a national court case that was massive across the country, because he reported something which should not have gone out. And it was about a judge considering some evidence, and it was not to be reported. So he almost brought that down. Now, if I had been him, as it was, the judge basically just reprimanded us, the organization and him and all this. If I had been on that morning, it would have been me, because I wouldn't have known any better. So the only thing I mean, I'd love to know kind of what I would have learned on a journalism course, but the only thing that I really regret is not having had that legal grounding. Yeah. Because I got away with but you know what? Also, in a funny way, I wonder if I probably experimented and pushed the envelope more because I didn't have it.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
One of my proudest things that I did was a documentary about the sex trade, because I'd always felt that the sex trade had been treated either as a sort of titillating kind of like he kind of childish thing, or was like, oh God, it's just so terrible, we need to shut it down immediately. And it's like, well, back in the real world, things are never that easy.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make something that took a real authentic look at things. So I interviewed like sex tourists and prostitutes and vice squad police and stuff like this. And I spent time, I went to brothels and all this sort of thing. And all this stuff I just did, not because the boss told me to, but because I was genuinely fascinated by it, because I wanted to understand so that I could create something about it. And, I don't know in the course of doing that whether I broke any ethical rules or anything like that. But what I did was try to find the truth and try to be honest. And I think if you're ultimately doing that, that's the key thing. But I probably got away with a lot more because I didn't know the law.
And I guess linked into that then, so you've had these moments of great sort of elation during the career. What makes you happy in your career, Richard? What is it that drives you?
Creativity.
Yeah.
You can turn up for work each morning if you like, and you can be a rip and read journalist. So you can turn up and you can have the editor say, here's the stories, write 20-second script on this, get a quick clip from that and all that, and you can get very bored. So either you persuade the editor that you need to do something different, which is going to excite you because you're genuinely passionate and interested about it, or you're going to do it in your own time. Because also when you start doing it in your own time and the editor goes, blimey, that was good, all of a sudden they start becoming more interested next time you ask to do that in your work time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would say creativity. I mean, I did, I did all kinds of things. So the sex trade was more hardcore. I was like doing solvent abuse and stuff like this. But then I remember going one time to the London Palladium where they were doing the auditions for the the little kids in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Yeah.
So my job was to create an audio piece on this. How can I make it interesting? So I did I turned it into a bit of an X Factor thing. So I got the producers of the show to sort of give the commentary. And if you think about it from an audio point of view, you've got 3 people on stage. I was one of them. So you're listening to this and you can't see it. And the first thing you hear is this beautiful little girl singing out, truly, truly scrumptious. And then you've got this angelic little boy singing out the next bit of it. And then you hear me croaking with the final line. So I do that. And then you hear the producers going, what the heck was that all about? So this was totally different. It was all about having fun, but it created an entertaining, creative audio piece. And again, it was just because it felt like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to try and do that? So I did it.
And you got to love what you do, haven't you, really?
Oh, I mean, that was, how often do you get to stand on the stage at the London Palladium and sing when you can't even sing?
Brilliant. And I guess as a bit of a retrospective then, Richard, if you could tell your 18-year-old self something now, what would it be?
Follow your gut, because if you've this sounds really cliched, but it's so true, is that if you follow your gut, and I don't mean doing what you think other people think is cool, I mean doing what you think is cool. If you follow that, you will find the passion and the energy to do whatever it is you want to do. If I had got out of my own way and listened to myself a few years before, I probably could have started journalism 5 years beforehand.
Yeah.
But I was convinced that to have a job meant going to an office and pushing paper.
Yeah.
It clearly, if other people can do it, then you can do it too. But also, so many people are so formulaic and just do what is required. If you can go out there, do that, and do it better and be more creative and more passionate, there is no reason why you can't ultimately beat a lot of them.
Exactly. And that's been my sort of mantra as well. So that's great to hear. And I guess since those sort of radio days, you've started your own sort of YouTube channels. You've gone into podcasting yourself. I've just put a link on the video for richardmidson.com. So is this the best place we can find more about you, Richard?
There's a lot of stuff about me on there. I mean, quite a lot of stuff. I should probably condense that website down a bit. Over the years, I think one of the problems when you love broadcasting, but eventually the problem with it is the hours that you need to put in.
Yeah. And
as you get older and older, obviously you get more and more commitments, and it just gets to that point where you just have to go, okay, I can't do it anymore. I love it. But there's no reason to stop fully. Yeah. So I did a YouTube channel, which was really exciting to do. I've done a bunch of different podcasts, and now I'm doing this one where I'm kind of investigating what makes podcasts work, which is allowing me to be a bit journalistic, but also allowing me to make a podcast too. Yeah. Well, I have a totally different day job now.
Yeah.
But it's my podcast is canimakeahitpodcast.com. Literally that. richardmidson.com is where you can find me. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you want to get any ideas or advice. But it really is just go for it and follow your gut and follow what you are truly passionate about.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank you for also help to pay it forwards to our listeners, Richard, and wish you well.
You're very welcome indeed. And I wish every single person watching this the very best of luck as well.
Okay.
Go for it. Just go for it.
Bye, Richard. Bye.